I'm Hillary Hendershot, your host, and this is Profit Boss Radio, episode 95. Profit Boss Radio is your weekly wealth mastermind. Profit Boss is also a community and a movement for women who are ready to take control of their money, break the glass ceiling, and give ourselves permission to finally have enough. Want the secrets of wealth to be yours? This is the place. I'm Hillary Hendershot. I'm a certified financial planner running a leading advisory firm for women, and I'm sharing with you real stories from real life and real women who are making it happen. Forget Wall Street. Let's do this, ladies. Have you ever wondered what it would have been like to have been raised by Dave Ramsey? Don't you think you'd be a money expert? Well, today's guest, Dave's daughter, would know firsthand. Rachel Cruz has earned a name for herself in her own right as a personal finance expert. She's become a #1 New York Times bestselling author. And she's here today to talk with us about her newest book, Love Your Life, Not Theirs, which I love because it sort of addresses kind of everything that's so deep-seated in our culture right now with social media, right? Everybody gets to put their highlight reel on Instagram, and we all get to scroll through and be jealous of it and feel like crap about ourselves and not realize why. So she's written the UnFOMO personal finance book, and she was kind enough to give me 3 copies of the book. So I'm passing along the generosity. We're running a contest this week. So go to hillaryhendershot.com/95 to get the details for how to enter to win one of 3 copies of Rachel Cruz's new book, Love Your Life, Not Theirs, 7 Money Habits for Living the Life You Want, and enjoy my conversation with Rachel Cruz. Rachel Cruz, welcome to Profit Boss Radio.
Thank you, Hillary. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, and I'm excited to do this show. And I think that your message and your book has some great points to help people really get things on track for 2018. So let's just start off with, Rachel, talk about the elephant in the room. Your dad is Dave Ramsey, sort of a founder of the personal financial health movement. I know a couple of my friends, even my sister, did his Financial Peace University. So he's kind of like a founding father. Tell us about yourself and how you ended up in the family business.
Yes. So when you're surrounded by all of this, the Dave Ramsey world, you're a little bit sucked in a sense. Yeah. But, I loved public speaking early on, which is very strange to people because people's biggest fear.
Yes.
Oh, really? Okay. Yes. Yeah. So I was actually 15. And a team member here at the office came up to me and they were like, hey, you should get on stage with your dad and pitch the kids' products that you have before going into a break. And I was like, get up on stage. Because at that time, these events were 5,000 to 10,000 people. And I was like, no, I'm 15 years old. Like, I'm a sophomore in high school. No, I'm not doing that. And I was really a little bit put out and nervous about it. But the more I thought about it, I was like, I could do that. And then Dad gave me all you entrepreneurs out there will love this. He was like, hey, I'll give you a commission, and whatever amount you sell at the back book tables after your break, I'll give you a cut of it. And I was like, I can do that. And I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. And so I remember going out on stage and doing that the first time, and I loved it. I mean, I really found my groove, and I was like, gosh, I actually had fun. Which again is not what many people say. So long story short, I found that niche very early on. And really when I went to college is when I realized the need for this message of really helping people not just get out of debt, but truly live financially well, right? Be wise with their money and live a life that they love. And I realized in college that so many of my friends had student loans and credit cards, and they were making all these mistakes that I knew people had told me, if only I knew this stuff earlier, my whole life would look different, right? If I did this earlier in life, if I got out of debt sooner, my whole life would look different. And I was watching my friends make these mistakes. And so I graduated from college, and I remember telling my dad, I was like, I want to do this. Like, I want to travel and speak and talk about this subject. And so that was, I guess, about 8 years ago. And I really started out doing a lot of high schools, a lot of colleges. And then as I grew up, if you will, quote unquote, and got married, I now have 2 kids. I feel like my message has kind of followed me along, where now I get to talk to a lot of women, and I have a YouTube show, and I'm on social media just trying to give women and men, the men out there, I'm not hating on you, you can follow too, but really help people find a way to gain control of their money and really let it work for them versus them working for their money, if you will. And so
you brought up something interesting. I wasn't going to ask about this, but you mentioned that you did a lot of speaking at high schools and colleges. And I get people excited about my message of personal financial health and women's financial empowerment all the time, saying, Hillary, you should come teach these 17-year-olds or 19-year-olds. And my kind of response to that is always like, yeah, except mostly they're not interested. So what?
Yes.
It's not a time of life when they're eager for the
Hillary,
spend less, save more,
right?
So what was your experience speaking at high schools and colleges? And how did you package the message?
Oh, man. Okay. Colleges were easier, college students, because they were a little bit more grown up, a little bit more independent. They hadn't really felt the weight of like their student loan debt yet because they had not graduated, but they knew it was coming. I mean, there was a little bit more reality. So I think college students were a little bit easier. High school students, you just have to have a calling from God to be able to speak to high school students, because it's tough. I mean, it is. They're a tough crowd. They're cynical. And half the time they're like, okay, that's awesome, but my parents control all the money, right? Like I may have a part-time job, but yeah. And so we actually have a youth speaker now that travels, and that's what he does. And I was like praising Jesus the moment he came on board. I was like, thank you, Anthony. This is great. Because it is needed, though. So the knowledge that they can have is huge, right? If you can really sway their thoughts and grab their attention and say, hey, if you do X, Y, and Z and you stay away from X, Y, and Z, you're going to be light years away from the average person by the time you graduate high school or even college. So there are definitely things they can learn and they need to learn, but they don't always have the practical side that they can physically go out and do it. And so we're really trying to implement some great tools currently now for teenagers to start that. But man, it was tough, especially when it was just me. I mean, I would get in a rental car and drive to somewhere in Kentucky. I'm like in Nashville, and I would show up at a school assembly. So it was a tough thing, but I loved the message. So I knew that was the big motivation behind it all. And I really did at that moment. I was like, and I still do, I believe like they need to know this, but man,
yes.
Whew,
Yes.
It's tough.
Yes.
It's tough.
I have a phrase. My grandmother used to say, honey, it's like pearls on swine. And that's not to say high school kids are swine. It's a figure of speech, but certainly pigs have no interest in pearls. Mm-hmm. So tell us, Rachel, come on, give us the real deal. Did Dave Ramsey teach you everything you needed to know about money? Was he the impeccable money dad?
He was. So I'll say this. I think a lot of people, when they hear, oh, you're Dave Ramsey's kid, they just picture in their mind that we had like mutual fund parties and like budget camps in the summer and like all this stuff. And thankfully that was not the case. He was not at all overboard with it all. I mean, he was not making us like fill out Excel sheets on the weekends. It was nothing like that. They did talk about money a lot. Both my dad and my mom both really engaged us on this subject, which was very refreshing now that I look back. And I'm so thankful for that because I see how many parents don't talk to their kids about money. And that's where a lot of the danger comes in. And so having parents that engaged us in that and would answer questions and on, I think even a bigger note, would let us fail. I mean, with our money, we had our own checking accounts by the time we each turned 15, and I bounced 3 checks the second month I had my account. Yes, not good, not good. But it wasn't, the end of the world. He actually made me go down to the bank and apologize to the branch manager for lying to him because I told him I had money in his bank to spend and I didn't. And I still wrote 3 checks. One of them being to Hollister, by the way. So that was a classic 15-year-old move. Yes, horrible. Golly, so embarrassing. But
classic.
But I look at that situation. I'm like, he didn't like yell and scream and I wasn't grounded, this whole big thing. It was a learning lesson. It was like, okay, this is what you did. And so you're going to have to go and own up to it, and so those kind of things, we did a lot, but I'm so thankful because I look back and I'm like, I'm glad I learned that at 15 and not at 25, it was good.
That's so funny because I always say my dad taught me responsibility. And I think I can't remember exactly, but I think I went home from a swim meet with someone's parka and he made me walk it to their front door and apologize. Yeah. So very similar.
So funny. So funny.
So and I think that really is the key is you say your mom and your dad were engaging you and your brothers and sisters?
I do, an older sister and a younger brother.
So
yes.
Engaging you and your siblings in the money conversation versus I think for parents, it can be really easy to say, well, we should just handle this for the kids. They don't really understand it. It's also kind of private. So what were some of the kinds of conversations you remember them having around you that impacted you?
Yeah. So we as teenagers, well, actually, I mean, even when we were little kids, we're never given an allowance. We were always on commission. So you work, you get paid. You don't work, you don't get paid. And so we had a chore chart and exactly what we'd get paid per chore and how many days of the week we had to do it. And at the end of each week, we got paid. And it was like, okay, what chores did you do? And we're going to pay you on those. And we had 3 envelopes, each of us did. And one was giving, one was saving, one was spending. And we had to take the money we earned that week and we had to put some in giving. We had to put some in saving and some in spending. And you know, that was kind of a mini form of budgeting in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Like breaking out your money. And that was great because those are really the 3 big categories, even as adults, that we use our money in. And so we learned that when we were teenagers, we had to save up and pay for half of our cars when we turned 16. And so Dad always called it the 401 Dave plan. I was always like, okay, Dad, yes. So we did that, which was great. So they really, not only did they just have conversations, but they interact, like we had to interact with money and really learn how money works. And so we made mistakes. We had times of celebration, all of it. But they were really great about just teaching us how it works, and having our own checking accounts as well was really huge, and having that responsibility. So I think it was something that they didn't obsess over by any means, but it was one that they really did. They engaged us. And of course, I mean, if we had any kind of financial question, we would ask, and there was no hesitation, everything. You know, they went bankrupt actually the year I was born. And I guess I never really knew that, or I knew it, but I didn't think about it. But I remember some guy in my class, I was probably in middle school. He was like, yeah, my parents read your dad's book and I hear y'all don't have any money. You're bankrupt. And I was like, what? And I went home and I was like, wait, what happened? And so they told us the story, you know, they were like the biggest mistake we ever made. And they, you know, would talk about it. It was just such a freeing topic. There was no shame attached to it. There was no embarrassment, no secrets. It was all really out in the open. We never knew how much he made. He kept his income on the down low for a very long time. But other than that, I mean, they really, really engaged us. So I am so thankful for that.
I think it's interesting you mentioned that you, first of all, were on commission. Second of all, had to pay for half of your cars, because I hear so many parents, especially now when it's so hard to get into college, I think there's this pull to think I should just let my high school students study. I should just let them do the things that are going to get them into college. So I'm going to pay for the car. I'm going to pay for the college, and then they're on their own afterward. But your parents sort of kind of eased you into it. And I think it worked out for you.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what school you go to, what degree you have, whatever's happening in your life, you have to know how to handle money. I mean, that's a skill that you absolutely have to have. And if you don't, it causes a whole lot of damage in the future, which some people, you know, sadly could be experiencing right now. And you want to be able to change that for the better, for sure. But it's a skill that everyone has to have. And I think it's one that, a lot of parents, they don't think about. And the encouraging thing is, if you are a parent out there of a teenager or a child, it doesn't take a lot, right? I mean, like, you're not sitting down and trying to explain a mutual fund to a 5-year-old. You're giving them very practical things. It just takes some being proactive and some intentionality.
Yeah. And you dedicated the book, which we're going to start talking about in a minute, to Amelia, your daughter. Is she your only daughter?
Well, I actually just had our second 5 months ago, which is crazy. So yeah, so Caroline is our newest. But yeah, I was in the middle of being pregnant with Amelia as I was writing this book. So she was a part of it the whole journey, I feel like.
Yes, she was literally a part of it. And so do you think you'll do the same things with Amelia and Caroline that your dad did with you?
Yeah, I think I really will. It's funny. My husband, Winston, and I were talking about that the other day, just about parenting in general, right? I mean, you look at your parents like, okay, we did this. Probably we'll change that. We'll keep this. But really the money stuff I look at and I'm like, in my opinion, and Winston agreed with me, it's not extreme. You know, none of it is like this crazy, outrageous a boot camp thing that they put us through. It was just real life, and it was in the ebb and flow of life, very casual. And so we may change up a little things here and there, but overall, I mean, for the majority of the stuff, I mean, I really do. I think we'll stick to it.
You're on board with it. Okay, good. Yeah, I think I was with my 18-month-old daughter the other day, and I was having some interaction about money. I think it was with a clerk or something. And we walked away from the counter, and my daughter said something about money. And maybe it just sounded like money. I don't know. My brain went, oh my God, did she just have an formative experience, right? Did I miss my opportunity to have it be did I blow it?
Totally right.
But I don't think so. I don't think so.
I think you got time. You're good, Hillary. You got a little time. Maybe like 2 months, but by 20 months, exactly. Hopefully she'll have it.
I'm pleased to introduce to Profit Boss Radio a new sponsor, Progression Credit Repair. And if you've got anything but beaming pride about your credit score, I want you to give them a call. Progression has 20 years of experience making sure that there's nothing on your credit report you would not want there. I can tell you from personal experience that credit repair works. It worked for me, and I cannot tell you how amazing it is to have a 760 credit score now. They'll work with you to build a game plan that fits your goals, budget, and needs. Visit their website at progression.com. They spell progression with an X, not an S. Or better yet, just call 1-833-333-2282 today to learn more. That's 1-833-333-2282. All right, so let's talk about the title of your book. By the way, #1 New York Times bestselling book. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The title is Love Your Life, Not Theirs. 7 Money Habits for Living the Life You Want. So you chose to focus this book on something that I think the millennials and the younger generations are calling FOMO, fear of missing out. Fear of missing out of all the stuff and the fun that we perceive other people are having. Why is that the angle for the book?
Well, I think a lot of it came out of my motivation of kind of where I was in that season of life too. But it's amazing what social media specifically has done with our lives. I mean, you have a picture into everyone's life, and it makes it so easy to compare your life to everyone else's. And the hard thing is that you're seeing just the best part of everyone's life, is that's what they're posting. Or even when you see them in person, right? They look great usually and put together. And it's like, gosh, if they're doing all of that, then either I'm missing out or I deserve to have that. And so you really are chasing almost someone else's life. And so there's this element of comparison that is so huge that not only affects our emotions and our joy, but it affects our paychecks as well. And so with this book, I wanted to really have people put the blinders on and focus on their life and their money, and then walk them through 7 money habits for living a life without debt, without stress, without worry, and really empowering them to take control of their money in the process.
And you said a word that I talk about a lot, which is deserve. And I think that when I hear that word come out of people's mouth, a yellow flag goes up in my mind, because when you start, first of all, there's no such thing as deserve. It doesn't actually exist in reality. But when people start to say, I deserve that, it's almost like they know they can't afford it and they shouldn't buy it, but they're going to anyway. Is that your experience?
They're justifying it.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and it's always in the sense of entitlement, and almost like a percentage of whining, where it's like, oh, I work so hard, I just deserve it.
Life
right? And
owes
like,
me that.
Yes. I mean, and it's a very dangerous place to be. When that becomes your mantra and that's like what you fall back on, you're probably going to live a life paycheck to paycheck and in debt. Because there's a lot of things we feel like, that would be nice to have. But when it's a little bit of this entitlement feeling, that's where it can get very dangerous.
Yeah. And so you said something that I really liked about comparing yourself. You said when you get caught up in social media, you're comparing yourself to make believe. And when you compare yourself to make believe, your real life will never feel good enough. Do you have some practical steps for women who, I think, there's research that's been published that says if you just scroll through your Facebook feed or your Instagram feed, we know that your mood drops by about 20 or 25%. I'm saying scrolling versus interacting, right? So what people are doing is just looking at like how happy people say they are on social media. Do you have rules or boundaries around social media, or are there practical tips you can give people to stop the comparisons?
Yeah, well, I think that there's going to be different levels depending on who you are or even the season of life you're in, right? I mean, there was a season of life for me where I was almost like not addicted, but I mean, I would look up, Hillary, and I would be on Instagram. And I'm like, how did I get here? Like, I swiped my phone, I clicked on the icon, like it's just appeared, and here I am immersed in it. And there was a point where that was just happening all the time, and my mood may or may not change, but I was like, gosh, it's just happening. And so I would even just move my social media icons to the very, very back of my iPhone. So it would take multiple swipes of icons to get there. So you can do something simple like that. But if you're in a pretty, bad spot, I would say emotionally, and you feel like I'm just getting drained every time I open up these apps, then delete them. I mean, they're always going to be there, but delete them and say, hey, for 60 days, for a month, whatever it is, I'm just not going to get on. And it's going to be really hard the first week, because it's so much of a habit that so many of us have. And so you're going to be breaking a habit, but within a couple of days, even just a week, it's amazing the freedom that you feel because you stop caring about people you don't really care about. I mean, you stop figuring out, okay, well, what's so-and-so doing, and you start focusing on your life. And so you can do something as extreme as completely deleting social media, or if you feel like you're in a place of like, okay, I'm fine with it, I have some control over it, maybe you just set boundaries. And so for me, I try not to, I'm not perfect at it, but I really try not to look at any social media or even emails when I get home from work at night until the girls go down. So from like 5 to 7, I don't try to touch my phone at all. And I'm like, you know what? My time is here, because especially if you're a working mom out there, the whole life balance thing of like kids and working, I mean, it's so hard and it's so difficult. And so many of my minutes and even my hours can be just me scrolling through other people's lives versus being present in my own with my own kids. And so it's a powerful thing when you say, hey, I'm going to just step away from this for a little bit. And so I think that's a great option. And then something else I've done is that I've found that gratitude helps beat the comparisons, because when your heart is filled with gratitude, there is no room for discontentment or comparisons. And so I started a gratitude list, and it sounds kind of cheesy, but every morning I would just type down 2 things that I'm grateful for. And so if I got in those moments where I'm like, oh, so-and-so just redid their kitchen and they have granite countertops and it's like a great light fixture, you're like, oh man.
I love that chandelier.
Yeah, totally. It's like, gosh. And so when I have those moments, I'm like, okay, Rachel, you can choose right now just to be happy for that person and go to your gratitude list and see everything else that you have going for your life and all the great things. It just helps put things in perspective for me. And so that gratitude list is something that it's kind of this like the staple that I have on my phone and in my notes section of my iPhone, that it's great for me. That's
beautiful. Yeah. And I think kind of 2 sides of the same hand, when people, if you find yourself jealous of other people's wealth or stuff or life, it's kind of this interesting thing, or envious, where it kind of keeps that level of success out of your life. And you have to get yourself to a place where you can be grateful for them, like grateful that there is that opportunity for them to have enough and have joy. And that's kind of the next place to opening your heart and your life to that level that you want.
Yes. And Hillary, the other crazy thing is too, when you look at those pictures, there's a sense of reality you have to have. And not that this is true for everyone, but there's a good chance that kitchen that's being remodeled right now, that they took out a second mortgage to do it, right? Or that vacation they're on, it could be on a credit card. Like, you don't know. Or the car, they could be paying car loans every single month to keep up with that. They don't have always the cash to go out and do these things. And so statistically speaking, people use debt a whole lot. And so I'm not saying everyone does. And, I can get in the mindset of like, oh, they're at the beach over Christmas. They're definitely in debt. Like, you know what I mean? I go to like the most horrible negative thing. But there is a reality to, hey, what they're choosing to do with their life, it may be something that's going to really harm them possibly in the future. And what you're choosing to do by not going on that vacation or not redoing your kitchen because you don't have the money is you're making a very wise choice for your life at that moment. And so there is a sense of reality too. You have to realize you don't know the entire story of that picture.
Perfect. So let's rewind a little bit and talk about step number 1, steer clear of debt. Specifically, I want to talk about cars. So I think people know that they need to get out of credit card debt, and you recommend paying off the highest interest rate credit card first, and then, continue that debt payment if you're paying.
Well, actually the lowest amount, the smallest amount of debt, not the interest rate.
Oh, sorry. So
no, you're great. Yeah.
But getting those credit cards paid off. And I think, people know that they need to get out of credit card debt. It's just a matter of, are you at that point where you're ready to reverse the flows from there being more going out than coming in to there being less? But it's cars that kind of confuse me about the American public. My husband and I bought our last car And we went to this kind of place where they don't negotiate. And then the price for the car was set. And my husband looked at me and he said, well, should we finance the car or should we pay cash? And I said, why would we finance it? And the salesperson said, everyone finances. And I said, we're not going to. And so we wrote a check for $40,000, wow. And that's my thing is I want to feel the pain of those dollars leaving my bank account. I don't want to mask that phenomenon because I did that for so long and I want to honor those dollars that I've earned. And I also really frankly don't want to pay the interest. But I think that most people still do borrow money for cars. What would you say about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the dealer's right. That's the normal thing. Most people do it. And I look to it, what the Wall Street Journal said that 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So normal is broke. Ugh. It is. I mean, that's it. That's the reality. And so I'm like, okay, well, if that's normal, I don't want to be normal, right? I'll be weird and I'll do whatever I have to do to be different because I don't want that to be normal for me. And so for car loans, it's so hard because financially speaking, and you get this, it's like you're paying interest on something that's going down in value. And especially if you have a new car, the instant you drive it off the lot, it's done. Or not done, but it goes down drastically in what it's worth. Yes. And so it's absolutely insane financially. When you just look at the math of it, it drives me crazy. I'm like, student loans, I hate, and I want people to go to college debt free. But I get how people talk themselves into it, right? I get that because they're like, well, it's for the future. But a car loan, I'm like, no, you're paying interest on something that's going down in value. And so I encourage people to go pay cash for your car. And it may not be your favorite brand new car, but you can get a great used car. And when you say used car, people think of like the heater isn't working, the radio's broke, the window won't go up and down, and like the seats are all torn up. Like don't think of that kind of car. Yes. I mean, and even a nice car. I mean, you can get a BMW, a Lexus, whatever, used for a great price. You really can. Or even if your budget's tighter, then go get a great Honda Civic or whatever it is used and pay that with cash and then save up month after month after month and then take that car, sell it a year later and put the money you've saved and step up in car. Take it slow. And so for sure, I am an advocate of paying for cars with cash, 100%.
Beautiful. Okay, so we're kind of going through your 7 money habits here. We started with number 3, quit the comparisons. Steer clear of debt was number 1. Number 2 is make a plan for your money. So let's talk about making a plan for your money. Is that what the old adage, give every dollar a job?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's the budget. So it's the B word. And it is. It's being intentional with where your money's going. So many people have no clue, right? You look back in 2017, you're doing your taxes and you're like, we made this much? Like, where did it go? I have no idea.
I know.
And so you want to be intentional with your money. And so every month, I say do a monthly budget, a zero-based budget. And that's where your income for the month minus all of your expenses. So everything from your rent or mortgage to gas, clothes, insurance, cable, whatever it is, all of your expenses, your income minus those expenses should equal 0. So every dollar that's coming in is assigned to a category. And those categories also include giving and saving as well. So you'll be saving some as well as paying those expenses. But you are just being intentional with every dollar and where it's going and being proactive because so many people live their lives where their money just happens to them. And you really want to happen to your money.
Yes, and I hate to use sports metaphors on this show because I do speak to primarily women, but I think everyone knows baseball. And I liken it to the difference between standing at the standing at the home plate, swinging at the pitches versus being the one standing on the pitcher's mound throwing the ball. And I think that's exactly the shift that you're talking about. And it's like, money happened to me or no, actually, I'm conscious about what I'm doing with my money.
Yeah.
All right. So step number 4, save like you mean it. It's important to make saving a priority because having nothing in savings adds to stress during crisis moments. Oh my gosh. So true. And people, yes. I think probably some people listening are a little raw just having come through the holidays. And so what would you say about that?
Yeah, well, this is actually women's greatest financial fear is the lack of security. That if something were to happen, that there's not the safety net financially. There's no money saved. And so what you want to do is get $1,000 very quickly. I want that to be one of your first things. I want you to start doing a budget but also get that $1,000 as quickly as possible. And then once you're out of debt, you can bump that emergency fund up, that starter emergency fund, up to 3 to 6 months of expenses. And that gives you a fully funded emergency fund. And on your budget that we talked about earlier, saving is actually going to go above your expenses. So I want you to save something. And when you're doing these emergency funds, I want you to do them with such tenacity, if you will. I want you to really go after it and make sacrifices. So when you lay out your budget and you have your restaurant category, maybe you cut it in half for 3 months and put that extra money towards savings. Whatever it is, get that $1,000 quickly. And then again, pay off that debt. And then once you're debt free, everything but your house, bump that starter emergency fund up to 3 to 6 months of expenses.
And I think, interestingly, it's accurate that women are afraid of not having financial security, but also so many women I meet don't give it to themselves by living a lifestyle that's paycheck to paycheck. So that's
a great point.
I find that even putting away $100 a month over time, it makes a difference. And it's easy for you to increase your savings rate over time. You'd be surprised how fast the numbers add up.
Absolutely. And once you start to feel that security and you're like, oh, wow, it's like, okay, well, sure, I can cut out a few, some clothing money this month. Yeah, I don't really need that jacket right now. Let's just put that money towards savings. What you'll do to sacrifice in your lifestyle to gain that security probably will surprise you.
Right. And I always found it's not like you can't have it if you just wait to get it.
Exactly.
Just wait,
Yep, all right. Exactly.
The next habit is talk about money even when it's hard. So what should we be talking about and with whom?
Yeah. So number one is your spouse. So your husband, you ladies out there listening, get with your husband and get on the same page with money. It's so funny when I talk to married couples, how many of them have separate checking accounts? They pay separate bills. It's like they're on two completely different worlds when it comes to their money. But when you are married, you are unified in every aspect of your marriage, including your money. You're not two business partners coming together. You are one. You're unified. And so coming together is so important from the tactical sense of one checking account, being together and with one. And a lot of people disagree with me on this, but this is huge. It's very, very difficult to win with money when you're married and your spouse is not on board with the goals and what's happening in the day to day. And the checking account, having one checking account together forces that communication, and you guys can open up and actually see what is happening. And it's very vulnerable and kind of scary if you've never done it before. But the amount of intimacy that's created between couples when they can talk about the subject and agree on it, it's absolutely amazing. And so people that go through the Financial Peace University class, like you talked about, I think you said your sister went through it. How many people come out and they say, our marriage was changed? And I'm like, it's not a marriage class. Like you did a money class. Yeah. But when you start working together, things happen in your marriage in a very beautiful way. And so start becoming one. And then part of that is the communication aspect. So doing the budget together and agreeing on it. But what's hard is that opposites attract. And so one of you is going to be a spender. One of you is going to be a saver. One of you is going to hate doing the budget. The other one's going to love doing a budget. And so there's going to be this opposites, but you really have to appreciate the other person, listen and talk like adults when you're sitting down and really get on the same page. And then also talking to your kids, if you have children too. We talked a lot about this at the beginning, so I won't get into it, but communicating about money in your household with your children is huge. And if you're single out there, finding a friend that you can talk with. I mean, this is massive. It's very hard to do things, in a solo mindset. So having another person speaking in and hearing your thoughts is huge.
Mm-hmm. And one of the most common questions I get is about what I call order of operations. Hillary, what should I save for first? And you already told people your first priority should be getting to $1,000 emergency savings and then get to 6 months. And so let's just talk through with people. How should they think about, they say, Hillary, should I save for my next car? Should I save for retirement? Should I save for the holidays? What should I save for first? And I think you have to have a car, right? But most people need far less car than they want.
Yes.
Right?
Amen. Yes.
So if you're in the middle of the lifespan of your car, if you can save $300 or $400 a month, you're going to have $5 or $6 or $7 grand when that car breaks down. You can probably get yourself a Honda Accord that can make it work, right?
That's right.
And the truth is, if you have to, you can tell your family, look, I'm not spending $1,000 this Christmas, right? So instead, I'm putting my savings towards something that I know is going to happen, which is I know I have these medical bills or I know I have the car. And then you've got to get yourself angled towards saving for your financial freedom, your retirement.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And it's just being realistic about your situation. Like you said, if you look at your budget and you're like, oh, wow, we don't really have a lot left over and it's November, let's say, in 2018, and you look and you're like, okay, there's not going to be a lot for Christmas. That's okay. Like you have to be able to say, I'm going to say no to things in the short term so I can say yes to them later in life. Because in a perfect world, you're going to be out of debt. You're going to have an emergency fund. You're going to be funding retirement, doing all these things in the next 18 to 24 months. And the next time Christmas rolls around in a couple of years, you may have a lot of money there to be like, hey, you know what? We're going to blow it out this year and have fun because we actually have the cash for it. And we've been responsible. And we're doing the things we should, like getting that emergency fund, funding retirement and that kind of thing.
Right. And I think something you've kind of touched on, if I could sort of thread it out a little bit, is this idea of being honest about where you're at and your resources. If it is November and there's no money left and there's nothing in the savings account, stretching yourself or putting Christmas on a credit card is kind of like telling a little white lie. It's like a little bit of financial dishonesty, and it always comes back to bite you.
It does, exactly. And a lot of people don't even know where they are financially because they don't want to look at the bills. They don't want to look at the checking account. They live in the state of denial. And so that's a great step for people. If that's you, face the fear. And I promise it's probably not as bad as you think it is. It might be, but for a lot of people, the idea of it is far more scarier than the reality. But get everything out on paper and know exactly what's happening in your financial life.
Okay, the next step is pay with cash. Using cash is a great reminder that money is finite. It has limits. When it's gone, it's gone. Okay, so do you literally mean cash, or is a debit card the same thing?
Well, debit card could be the same thing, but I still love actual cash, and it's it's like an old school way of thinking about it. But if you're just getting started on this whole process and you're budgeting for the first time and you're trying to get that $1,000 emergency fund, you're starting out this plan, I really would recommend looking at your budget and cashing out maybe 2 or 3 categories. So even if it's groceries, maybe it's clothing, whatever it is, find 2 or 3 things that you can cash out and use actual cash for a few months, because it's amazing what happens. Cash is emotional. You feel cash, and the debit card a little bit the same way, because the money's coming out of your checking account. But that emotion, I think, is so great because it's an instant accountability of thinking, okay, do I really want to buy this? Is this what we need? Is this part of the plan? I mean, it just makes you second guess everything in a really great way. And so the cash part is great. Carnegie Mellon actually published a study that showed that when you spend with cash, your brain registers pain.
Yes.
So you physically hurt when you pay with cash. And so if you haven't done it in a while, do it. I really would. I would challenge you for a few months, cash some stuff out and actually use cash.
We sound a little evil advocating pain, but it's better for you in the long run.
Yeah, that's right. I know.
If you think about it, because credit cards are spend up and cash and debit cards are spend down. And I think it's important to watch your money spend down. Otherwise, what you're watching is the opposite of what's actually happening.
Exactly. I kind of picture it like you're in a car, and when you get to the end of the month and you're paying a credit card bill, you're looking in the rearview mirror. Like you're paying for things that you've eaten, movies you've seen, clothes you've worn, versus looking at the windshield and saying, like at the beginning of the month, starting a budget and saying, hey, this is where our cash is going to go. And so you're really looking forward instead of backward.
Yeah. And you really have to earn the right to spend on a credit card. Some people say, but I have to have the points on my credit card. Okay. If you pay it off every month and you never miss a month, then fine. But if you miss a month or carry a balance, then you haven't quite earned the right to spend on a credit card.
You're nicer than me, Hillary.
Am I?
Yeah, I'm like, don't have a credit card. Get rid of them. You got a debit card. A debit card will do everything a credit card will do.
All right. The last step is think before you spend. So it's a little esoteric. What do you mean, think before you spend?
Yes. So many of our shopping decisions happen on impulse, and they happen like $20 at a time. And so if you walk into Target, for instance, this is like me, it's like the black hole of goodness. I mean, it's like everything I need is in Target, and you just start to
Target. I feel like they have the worst reputation. Everyone says that about that store. You could
horrible.
Just spend infinitely at that place.
It's miserable. I'm going in for diapers and I'm walking out with a purse, flip flops, and mascara. And I'm like, how is this happening? And so it's these little purchases that really can get us. And so it's amazing if you just completely take the emotion out of your spending, which is very hard to do. But if you actually use your brain and think before you spend, you're actually going to end up spending less. And if it's a big purchase, and that's relative to wherever you are financially, maybe $100, that may be $1,000. But if whatever the big purchase is, I always say sleep on it. Like if you find that TV that you guys have been looking for, or the car, even whatever it is, sleep on it. And the next day, it's amazing once that emotion and that almost the energy that you had to go buy it fades away, you can actually use more logical sense. And so just think before you spend. And it sounds so simple, but so many people don't.
Amazing. Well, Rachel, congratulations again on writing a #1 New York Times bestseller. It's your second bestseller, right?
Yes, it is.
Kudos to you. I'm a successful
you.
speaker and author, and I've got 3 copies of the book that I'll be giving away in the Profit Boss Facebook group. So the book again is called Love Your Life, Not Theirs, 7 Money Habits for Living the Life You Want. If you go to the show notes at hillaryhendershot.com, there will be a link to buy the book on Amazon, or you can also buy it at Rachel Cruz, CRUZE.com. And again, come on over to the private Facebook group at hillaryhendershot.com/Profit Boss. We will be giving away 3 copies of the book. Rachel, anything else you'd like to say today?
I mean, I would encourage you ladies listening, that no matter where you are financially, some of you guys are killing it and you're doing everything. Some of you feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're making no room of improvement. No matter where you are, you can do this. What we talked about was a mouthful of all this information, but take it one step at a time. And no matter where you are financially, you can gain control of your money and you can win.
I love it. Rachel, thanks for joining us on Profit Boss Radio.
Absolutely. Thanks, Hillary, for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Profit Boss Radio. If you liked it, share it with an artist or creative that you love. And whether you're a painter or a mathematician, may you have all the freedom and prosperity you want.